So yeah, welcome to Horn Camp Connect, a live from KBHC 2020, an offering of Cormont Music. I'm your moderator, Chris Williams, staff member here at KBHC. Today's session of Horn Camp Connect will be led by Bernhard Scully and will feature also Bernhard Scully, who will present on a topic, not a singing approach, a path to musical excellence. Of course, sitting right next to me, I think the title screen said Peggy, but today it will be Bernhard. As always, before we jump into the session, just a few Zoom housekeeping items. So that everyone is able to hear the presentation, we've muted everyone here. Please stay muted for the duration unless Bernhard or I ask you directly to unmute. If your name on your Zoom account doesn't match your actual name, we ask that you go ahead, go to participants and change your name there. If you click on the chat, you'll see a chat box appear somewhere in the void that is Zoom. Comments posted here are affected by a drop-down menu located directly above the text box. Just be sure that whatever selection you've made here matches who you want to see, as it can vary depending on your selection here. And with that all out of the way, I'll go ahead and hand the session off to Bernhard. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's great to see everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for getting up early in the morning for this. So we're on day 4 now of the warm-up. It kind of ramps up a lot today, so we should just get started because there's a lot of content. All right, so let's stand up and do our stretches. I have a little bit of a frog in my throat today. Excuse me. So twisting, here we go. You know how to do this? Full twist is this, 10 of these. See some of you getting up. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The body limbered up. Okay, now we're going to do fold over for 10 counts. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. Now we're going to do our side bends. I'm going to grab my left hand, who grabs my right hand. I'm going to pull myself this way for 10 counts. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Again, on the other side, right hand grabs left hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. Now we're going to do arm rotations to move out the lactic acid that builds up in our bodies. So do backwards first. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. Now forwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. And lastly, we're going to do our shoulder shrugs, which is like giving ourselves a nice neck massage. Get all that lactic acid moved out. Here we go. Backwards first. 10 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now forwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, hope you feel more limbered up. So we're going to do breathing now, and this is going to push us a little farther than yesterday. I'll get the metronome on here at 60. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to build off what we've done, and we have a new component to this. At the very after 21 counts of out, we're going to take a breath in and to as long as we can go. So this is going to try to push us to the max today. So So we'll build with 3, 6, 4, 8, 5, 10. I'll announce them. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, breathe. Good. Make sure each inhalation, whatever the count, you breathe as full as you can. Here's 4 and 8, 2, ready, go. Good. Now 5 and 10. 1, 2, ready, go. Good. Now 6 and 12. 1, 2, ready, go. Good. Now we're gonna switch, do 3 in and 15. Make sure the 3 is totally full. Ready? 1, 2, ready, go. Nice. Now we're gonna do 2 and 18. Again, on 2 is gonna be full. 1, 2, ready, go. All right, now one more for our numbered exhalations. This is 1 in at totally full capacity and 21 out. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. Good. If this is too much, don't worry. You can just do as you like. Don't push yourself beyond what you feel comfortable. Now, lastly, we're going to take at the 1 count in, and we're going to just breathe out as long as we can go. And each day, this is a good thing to test to see if we can, go above our benchmark from the previous day. All right, here we go. Get limbered up, taking a nice big breath, and blow out for as long as you can. 1, 2, ready, go. Here we get to 40. Let's try to push it every day. See if we can get up to the 30s and 40s, maybe even beyond. Okay, so now we're going to do the capacity breathing. Take a quick rest with this. This is not charging. Oh, okay. Oh, there we go. All right, so capacity breathing, we take in 1 big breath like we just did. Then we top it off 2 times. Just a little bit more to fill up, and then we're going to breathe out, hissing. Let's do do 3 of these. 1, 2, ready, go. Get everything out. Okay, here we go again. 1, 2, ready, go. Every last bit. And one more. 1, 2, ready, go. Every last bit. Okay, time for our first notes of the day. Excellent job. Turn off. So just like before, we know the routine. We're gonna do a little free buzz just to get the lips working wherever it's easiest. That's where my free buzz normally is at the start. And now on the mouthpiece, I'll do the same thing. Good. Now take that nice breath that we've already been taking. Every one of these things is a breathing exercise too. Next, I'm just gonna, without a tongue, play a note and see what comes up. Okay, so listen to the sound, try to fall in love with the sound, see what you get. Try that. Remember to relax, to focus on the exhalation and the breath. Okay, now we're going to continue with our ho-do-do to build on that. Here we go. It's just not charging for some reason. 1, 2, ready. Now D flat. Now D. E flat. E. F. F sharp. Now G. A flat. A natural. Mid-range octave, nice and warmed up. Now we're going to go to our song of the day. Today we have another lullaby. This is a traditional Sioux Native American lullaby, which is very beautiful. That I came across. Really nice to sing. So we're going to sing it together to get our musical mind working. And when I do my presentation today, hopefully you can see some of the relationship between this warm-up and some of the, I guess, my philosophies as a teacher and as a performer. So we get our first note. Excuse me, today I have a little pollen allergy, so I'll do my best here. So I'm just going to sing on law, try to make it a beautiful phrase, try to get in connection with my inner phrasing. La, na, 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 la, na, 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 la, 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 la. If this is too high or a difficult range for you, you can certainly change the range or the key. So now I'm going to do it on the mouthpiece. And the same thing, I'll try to have the same standard of pitch and rhythm and musicality on the mouthpiece. Really like this one. And now the same thing on the horn. We're just going to play it, same phrasing. We're going to connect what we just did. Everybody play with me. 1, 2, okay. One to play. So to be creative with this, what I would say, an idea I might give for you is, the song is outlining its tonality really well. It's sort of in this minor pentatonic, which is that's kind of what the piece is based on. You could just take those notes and start to explore the sonorities a bit, if that's interesting for you. So. That's the sonority. It's a beautiful sonority, the minor pentatonic, what this song is based on. So take the key, take the basis of the piece and explore it some more. An idea. Okay. So now we are on the free buzz builder, which we're just expanding slightly today. One more bar. Again, you don't have to be good at this or even do it honestly to warm up well. By no means do we suggest that. It's simply giving you an idea. It's something that many of my teachers, whether it was Doug Hill or Gail Williams or Freud Sverkra, a lot of my teachers from the past really strongly recommended free buzzing. This is a James Stamp exercise for those of you that know the famous teacher from LA, James Stamp. It's just another tool. Someone asked me yesterday, what should the sound be? Should it be more of like a really tight, controlled sound, like or more of a relaxed sound? I think it should be more relaxed because I think that the tightness would probably not translate well to the horn playing. And one thing to keep in mind as well is that when you free buzz, it's basically like playing an octave above on the horn. So don't worry if you can't free buzz very high. I certainly can't. So what we're doing right now is kind of like mid-range notes on the horn if you were to actually translate it back. Okay, so thank you. All right. That's all it is. We just keep building upwards. The tonic note becomes a leading tone, and this incremental buzzing slowly will build our free buzz so you can get a better range. When I first started doing this, I didn't have, I maybe could play 1 or 2 notes. And now I have developed it. You can develop it the same way as your horn range. Same thing now with the mouthpiece. Okay, so now moving on to the sirens. We're just now adding the very upper octave today. So again, don't worry if you can't do all of it, just try. Let's do our first siren all together. Never get as much sound as you can in between. Good, now we're gonna start on the G like we did the day before. That note. That one goes right through my break, so you can hear it. Now we're gonna go an octave higher. Now we're gonna take this up a fourth to go to the upper part of the range. And when you go to the high range, I like to think of like the air has to move faster now. So if you have your air is a dial, if the dial is down here at 2 or 3, in order to go up, I got to turn it up. I got to turn that speed up, so you can kind of do with the hand. So I'm turning it up to 10. If it goes higher, I got to go to 11 because mine goes to 11. That's just kidding. Okay, Spinal Tap reference. Let's try it. The upper one. Ready? Okay, and tomorrow we'll add the lower octave again. So now we're starting the harmonic series a little differently because we're moving up the range. So a really good way to start building range in harmonic series is to start on the 1 and 3 combination. Why 1 and 3? Well, it's more stable than 1, 2, and 3, but we still include that a little later. So sometimes starting in 1, 2, and 3 because it's just so unstable. You're barely playing in tune with anything. 1 and 3 is a bit more, so I would suggest starting 1 and 3. Just feels better. We're just going to be building this, and we go up the octave, all the way back down. Now we're going to expand it out up to the very top of the register since we've already got there on the mouthpiece. So let me just demonstrate this for you real quick one time. I'm going to go a little faster than 60. Let's see, I'll go about maybe like, I might try 80 actually for this particular study. It's okay to bump them into place. The air is front and center, just like it was in the mouthpiece buzzing. So actually that's a little fast. Let me go back down to 72. Let's try it there. All right, let's try it, everybody. Take a breath wherever you need it. 1, 2, okay. Yeah, it should feel pretty good. Just be relaxed. Don't worry if it's not perfect. Just play through it. Now we're going to take that and start in 1, 2, and 3, so a half step lower, and we're going to go up as high as we can to allow this to build into our high range. All right, and it's the final part of it. So it's the next line down. Okay, starting 1, 2, and 3, which is this sound. Okay, 1, 2, okay. Good. Let's try 1 and 3. 1, 2. I'm going to go 2 and 3. 1, 2. Good. Now we're going to 1 and 2. 1, 2. Good. Now fingering 1. 1, 2. All right, now fingering 2. Don't worry if you can't quite get up there, just try your best. 1, 2. Let's try for the high C. Again, just try it, see if it works. 1, 2. All right, hopefully you can get a little bit up there. And each day, just try it new. See what we can get. So I think this is really good. We very quickly in the warm-up now, quicker than we have, we've got to the high range. I think that's a pretty good thing to do, not to linger too much in the low range and mid range, because then the lip's going to become hyper adapted. So this gets us up there pretty rapidly, but still with a nice previous warm-up. Okay, so now we're going to continue with our lip trill builder. Now we're adding sextuplets to this. So it's one more subdivision leading us into our ultimate goal of a lip trill, full-blown lip trill, or as Jeff Agrell calls it, adjacent harmonic slur, which is less catchy, but more musically correct. So I'm just gonna play I'll start in the triplets and then kind of go into the sextuplets. Just gonna show you how that sounds. And you want to be really, really sure to play these subdivisions correctly, because what we're building here is incremental control with this. We want to have all the control leading up to the full-blown flourish of the lip trill. If we bypass some steps, we're probably not going to have as full of command of the ultimate trill. So it's these sextuplets. Really place them well in your practice, and you get to slow it down. Absolutely, don't. The 60 is a very arbitrary tempo, or if you want to speed it up, obviously. Let's do the whole thing, starting on the half notes. Take breaths where you need them. 1, 2, ready? Didn't quite take enough breaths. That's it. So then tomorrow we're going to get the octuplets going. And again, the notes I have written after it are just all the notes that you can practice this on for the whole step trills. Once you get above the G, they'll become half step trills, and once you go below the E, you can certainly practice them there if they take a lot of face. But you know, as you get better and better with this, you want to put this into practice probably daily in some way to build. My students ask me like, well, how can I get a lip trill? It's like, well, when I first started practicing this stuff, I did it every day on all the notes that I could for probably 20 minutes a day. But then it gets easier, and then eventually you can maybe do it 2 minutes a day, like once you learn it. But to learn it and get really good at it can take a very long time. So just have patience with it, and this is how you build it. Okay, now we're going to add some valves, beautiful sounds. I'm gonna pick up the tempo of this a little bit because we got a lot of it to do. I'm gonna go 76. So stay on the F horn if you like. We recommend it. But by all means, use whatever fingerings you want and only do as much as you feel able. We're gonna really work ourselves out with this today. As you can see, this kind of becomes the core, part of the core element of the warm-up in some ways, kind of putting everything together. And always feel free to sing it and buzz it, you know, during the process. Here we go. 1, 2, ready? A flat, 2. Turn the page. Now on F sharp. 1, 2. A, 2. F, 2. B flat, 2. E, 2. B, 2. To move my page here. Okay, now we're in E flat. 1, 2. C, 2, 3. So we're now the lower D flat. 1, 2, okay. D, 2, okay. C, 2, okay. E flat, 2. B, 2. Gotta move my page again. Got a bit more to do, we're almost done. E, 2, okay. B flat, 2, okay. F, 1, 2. Turn the page. Down to A, 1, 2, okay. F sharp, 2. A flat, 2, okay. G, 2, okay. Move the page here. Got just 3 more. Here we go. Here's low G. 1, 2. Okay. That's where your long breaths are going to come in handy. So lastly, we're going up one more half step into the upper range today, up to the A flat, actually B flat because it's first, and then one more down below F sharp. Ready? 1, 2, okay. Lastly, F sharp. 1, 2, okay. We're really expanding on that now, but hopefully you see the benefit of this exercise. Okay, so tomorrow we'll go a little bit higher and lower with that one. So now we are once again doing articulation. We're making good time. I'm going to go back down to 60 for this now. So we're adding some range to the chromatic scale. And as we've recommended, this is a great time for us to practice both our F horn and B flat horn fingerings. I know it seems very difficult to do that, but it's one of those things where if you start to do it every day, at first it seems impossible, but then you realize, oh, that's not that hard, and then you can just do it. So I recommend just doing it every day because that's how you learn to treat the horn as one rather than separate parts. It'll be very handy for you when you play your descant horn and you know your B flat letters. Okay, so we're gonna. This is now for articulation. So you can choose your articulation. You might vary it up from day to day. Water up here. Okay, so let's try it together. Take a breath where you need it. The tempo is like that. Let's do it. 2.5 octaves. 1, F horn. Okay. I know it's challenging. Now let's try it on the B flat. So starting on trigger 1 and 3 on that low C, which is a great combination, by the way, for alternate fingering. A lot of things. All right, B flat horn. 1, 2, 1. All right, and this is one you can keep taking faster. You know, it's very useful. Try to get it up to faster tempos. Chromatic scale is a fantastic way of learning the fingerings and going throughout the range. Okay, lastly, but not leastly, we're doing our articulated major scales and arpeggios. These are now in 16th note patterns with 8th notes. We go right into the arpeggio and we do it triplets. So it's just ramping up. Still only 1 octave, so we've got that going for us. Again, choose the articulation. I would say vary this up. So you might start with maybe more of a staccato like this. And maybe like the next one is and maybe you even vary it like you do that kind of stuff too. Add some slurs, you know, whatever you want. It's all good. But you know, just get some articulation and get that going. Circle of fifths once again. Let's do it. 1, 2, okay. G, 2, ready? D, 2, ready? A, 2, ready? E, 2, ready? B, 2, ready? F sharp, 2, ready? B flat, 2, ready? A flat, 2, ready? I move my page just a bit, we're almost done. E flat, 2, ready? B flat, 2, ready? F lastly, ready? All right, and maybe just we'll take 1 minute, since that we have 2 minutes to spare, to do a couple of warm downs, these optional warm downs. Let's try it. What this sounds like, I'm not sure if Jesse did this with you yesterday. Let's just kind of get some of the lactic acid out. Let's try it. Let's go through this little warm down here, since this was quite an intense workout. So again, just do the best you can. If it's too low, try it up the octave. Here we go. 1, 2, ready? Now I'm really relaxed. Thanks for joining me today, everybody, and let's take a little break, and I'll see you at, or should we go right into it, or what do you think?
It's totally up to you.
Put a 5-minute break. Take a 5-minute break. I need to just take a breather, and I'll see you in 5 minutes for my presentation, which deals all about how we can become a better horn player by becoming a better musician first.
Perfect.
Okay, I think we're back. All right, hope everybody had a good break. Got a lot of stuff to cover here with this presentation. This is a presentation that I have given at horn workshops in the past, and sort of tweaked it over time. And I think that one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it is because it kind of encapsulates my philosophy in terms of teaching, in terms of how the horn camp functions, in terms of how my studio functions at the University of Illinois, and just kind of how I think about music, and I hope it's helpful to you. So I call it the path to musical excellence, becoming a better player by first becoming a better musician. So here we go. Does that work? Is it? I didn't put my slide. Oh, there we go. The brain. So I think it's important to understand that when we're talking about learning things, like getting better at music, obviously our brain is the number one thing. You can think of it as our musical mind that we're developing. And it's our greatest friend because it learns things rapidly. It retains all the information we give it and we develop. But it also can be our greatest enemy if we don't put in sort of the correct input, so to speak, that would tie into our goals. So if we do certain things, we do them over and over and over, and they're not really what we want, or they're inefficient in some way that is not beneficial to us, then we've developed our brain in a way that's not useful for us. And the brain doesn't judge, it just sort of does what we tell it. So that's important to keep in mind when we're talking about developing our musical mind. So everything we've learned and experienced is who we are today. It's kind of an amazing thing. Ever since we were born, we're taking in all the information, and very much musically so. I always tell the students the embouchure is really just a product of what we played. To their, the embouchure is this. It's like, well, we've developed it and we play all this music, and this is just a product of that. And it's the same thing with our brain. The greater our experience and knowledge, the more we will have to draw from to realize our goals. So there's so many things to learn in the world now, it's overwhelming. But I think that the more we expose ourselves to new concepts, we challenge ourselves, learning things even obviously way beyond music. I think learning subjects that are seemingly not related, but everything's interrelated. So the more you learn about engineering, for instance, which I've been learning about this past year through a project, the more you understand the relationship it has with music, and it helps your knowledge of music. So just an encouragement for lifelong learning in all respects. The mind directs the body. So as we are musicians, our goal as players is to be as fully self-realized as we can be. And we'll kind of talk more about what that means as we go through the presentation. We must train our mind so it can direct our body. So I think part of it, as we begin this process of becoming, artists, musicians, we have our goal, our authentic self, so to speak, that we may not even understand at the beginning. It's kind of like our voice. We're sort of understanding our voice, understanding we're in music because we want to probably express ourselves in some ways. So as we go through the process, the more we understand, the better we get, the more we understand our sound, the more our intention becomes such that we can direct our process. And then eventually we strive to play like we sing. So that's why I encourage singing so much. It has so many benefits. Not just that we get the right notes, not just that we get the right rhythms, but also that we understand how we feel about the music. And sometimes in the horn, it's very difficult to do that because we're trying to just negotiate the instruments. So I really believe that the horn ultimately is an extension of our voice. Okay, so how do we train the musical mind? Well, there's listening and immersing ourselves in music. Obviously, this sounds very obvious, but maybe it's not quite so obvious because when we listen, we can kind of take different approaches. We can take the approach of active listening or passive listening. Passive listening passive listening is not wrong, and passive sounds like it can be lesser, but it's just things we do, like we have the radio on in the car, we have some music on during dinner. We're listening to it, we're enjoying it, but we're not really internalizing it. We're not really focusing on it or allowing it to really sink in a way that's maybe allowing us to grow in some ways. Whereas active listening is sitting maybe with a recording, with a score in hand. We're looking at all the parts of the orchestral score, for instance, As the music is playing, we're noticing how the horn fits into the other instruments, and taking great account of what's happening. We're paying attention to rhythm, the harmony. We're paying attention to expression. We're very in tune with our feelings about the music. That's active listening. And I tell my students, if you're practicing active listening with music, you really are practicing in many ways. But many people don't allow themselves to listen that way. And the active listening component actually translates very much to your own personal practice. We talked about this yesterday in the fundamentals class here, where if you're practicing and you're just sort of going through the motions, like, oh, I'll do the exercises and this, but you're not really listening to your sound. You're not really allowing yourself to change and adapt according to what your intention would want. You're probably not realizing your potential as an artist. And so that kind of listening, the more you can do it in your practice, it's going to make you much better. It's what we're trying to encourage in these warm-ups. And it's one of the reasons we have, for instance, Song of the Day, because it seems like it's just a little bit, but it gets us really actively listening right away, and not waiting for, say, an hour or more or later, and maybe never, to engage that part of the process. So what are the skills as a musician we need to learn? Well, music theory, you probably heard this term. And by the way, there's not one music theory, by the way. It's not like the immutable music theory. There are actually different music theories that are all equal for pretty much every kind of music in the world. So whatever music you like, if you're a classical musician, probably study classical music theory. If you're a jazz musician, I'd say study jazz theory. If you study Hindustani or Carnatic music, then you'll have your own theory. But whatever it is, you want to become familiar with it, because really it's just a way of learning what music means from the printed page, or from its components. Being familiar with all aspects of music: melody, harmony, rhythm, forms, etc. What is our musical role? Like, for instance, the orchestra is a good example where most of our time we're really not playing solos, we're playing accompanying incidental parts. And so knowing always who we're playing with, what part of the chord we're on, how to interpret rhythms, that really is just how we apply music theory to our musicianship. And so knowing it really allows us to have a lot more command of the music that we play. Do we have the melody? Where are we in the chord? What key or mode are we in? That's a really important thing to know as well. And so we learn those things in music theory. I really like music theory. I think it's really fun. And especially if you realize there are, infinite musical theories, so to speak, around the world. They're all great. So the heart of the matter to me as a horn player is ear training, which is really our best friend. Again, go back to the singing. I tell my students, and I just know this, if you can sing it, and especially if you then can buzz it, you can certainly play it on the horn, figure it out. If you are having trouble singing it, if it's not quite gelling or some of the pitching is not right, probably the horn is still going to be difficult, because the horn doesn't really do anything for us, right? It's like a really kind of terrible friend sometimes, where like you're just putting everything in and it's sort of not really giving anything back until you put in the right stuff, and then it gives this glorious thing back. So we have to be able to hear things internally, and then we are the instrument. We as humans are the instrument. The horn is just the amplification device. So ear training is the way that we know we've internalized the sound, we've internalized the rhythms, our feelings we're putting forth come through in this, hearing all the intervals, scales, modes, harmony, bass lines, rhythms, melodies, any combination thereof, all the components of music. We need to be able to internalize these things before we play the horn. And then be able to sing everything we play. And by everything, I'm not talking about like, some of the modern music you play in band. That might be a little bit too much. I'm not going to make you sing the Bernhard Scully etudes or something. But I think, the majority of music we play, like these songs we're singing, like just be able to sing them. Everybody should be able to sing, parts of Mozart concertos and Strauss and, some of the slower melodies. And then be able to buzz it. And that's where, even if it's a little too difficult to sing, buzzing, we should be able to do it. If you can't buzz it, and buzz it with a really great sound and a lot of evenness, and by that I'll just demonstrate, we want to know what we're going for. So if I sing a melody, Da da dee dum. I want my mouthpiece buzz now to be reflective of my voice. Very sustained. If I do it more of a, kind of a held back sound or not really playing through with the air, that's not going to translate very well. So when you buzz it, really go for a really big, airy, or a big, a resonant, buzzy, very free sound. Singing and buzzing. Yeah, so I go into this a bit more here. Sing everything you play, buzz everything you play, repeating that. Have the highest standard for pitch and rhythm. So just because we're singing something and just because we're buzzing and not playing on the horn doesn't mean we're going to let go of our musical standards. I tell the students, have the Carnegie Hall standard when you're singing and buzzing for pitch, rhythm, all the expression that's written in the music, and certainly your own personal expression. Have the highest standard for sound. Go for a rich, thick, airy, buzzy, dense sound of the mouthpiece. Lots of core in the sound. Mouthpiece is a microscope when we're playing. It shows off the physical and the mental things that are going on. So in the mouthpiece, you'll hear if you can hear it. You'll hear if there are inconsistencies in the sound. You'll hear if there's, sort of breaks that you're not, playing through. My engineering friend always says it's like the raw input we're putting into the horn. So think about it that way. So history of music, which could also be sort of a knowledge of, style, form, idiom of music. And this is, sometimes in music school, this can be presented in maybe not the most interesting way, honestly. It's like, oh, music history, I don't want to go. But it can be one of the most fascinating things you could ever learn. And it can also inform us as performers and make our performance so much better, like so much more interesting. So you ask questions like, what is the style of the music we're performing? If it's classical music, is it from the Baroque era? Is it from the classical? If it's jazz, like is it bebop or is it earlier swing? Is it kind of post bop or something? All these things are important. If you don't know that, you probably aren't playing the music the way it originally was intended in some ways. What was the era of the composition like? Political, philosophical, scientific, social. So playing a Mahler symphony, for instance, like knowing that he was, friends with Sigmund Freud, knowing that he, loved to read Nietzsche and, all the aspects of Austrian society back then. I mean, all of it informed his music. He would use these concepts, infusing them in the music, and it really, to understand that, allows us to bring it to life even more. And plus, it's just fascinating. He died right before World War I, and he could, some people think of him as sort of a musical prophet of the 20th century because of the way he was putting forth his feelings in music. What was the composer's life like? I just use Mahler again. He had a very tragic life, and he would infuse that into his music. A lot of this idea of death and rebirth. Beethoven's a good example, or like the Organ Symphony. When you think about like famous jazz artists like Charlie Parker, like what was his life like? As this person who was basically, at the forefront of creating jazz essentially as we know it right now. So their lives are really interesting, worth exploring in many books and resources. Now we have Wikipedia too. Was the piece written for a period instrument? E natural horn. Now this is extremely useful for us. So if you play the Mendelssohn Nocturne, for instance, and kind of struggling with fingerings, then just try it on E horn. Just put down the second valve. And if you can get a hold of a real natural horn, here at camp we have a ton of them. That gives you a really good sense of what was originally like to play this piece. Some of the more challenging aspects of that, but also sometimes it actually makes things easier. I remember playing Brandenburg on a Baroque horn and realizing, wow, I mean, maybe it's a little harder with the accuracy from the fact we don't have valves, but the instrument's super light. So some of the trappings of the modern horn on repertoire like that, you find it wasn't maybe a challenge for the earlier instruments. So, and plus it gets you into a certain kind of sound that you want to kind of bring forth on the modern instruments, I think. What were the performance practices? And we have a lot of information about that, and that's very interesting to put into our music and any other relevant information. I mean, you can see, you can just keep going down, and these are all techniques that we can use to bring more vitality to our performances, connect more with audiences. A little bit in improvising. So, with my students, we do a lot of improvising. Starts off on scales, and you might say, well, why would you do that? It's like, well, why not? And the first thing people usually say is like, well, I can't do that. I can't improvise. And I say, well, I think you can, because you've been doing it linguistically since you were born. Think about that. Think if I had I actually do have a cue card here, so to speak, but I'm actually riffing on the ideas. In language, we don't do that. We don't have a written notepad every time we speak. But in music, interestingly enough, if we learn formalized music, we kind of do that. Like, we never are just playing spontaneously like we would speaking. We're never having conversations like that musically, unless you're very lucky and horn, I think it's especially egregious because maybe we just have so much music written for us, we just kind of start with it. We kind of bypass the whole stage of playing music spontaneously and exploring our own ideas, because it's like, well, we got Mozart. But I think it's really good to improvise. By that, I just mean create music that's not written on the page. So my students, they say they can't do it, but all of a sudden they start to do it. And the next thing they say is like, well, how do I know if I'm doing it right? I say, that's interesting you say that, because that's the wrong question, right? That's you can't ask that question, because everything you do is right. When you're improvising, there's not a right or wrong. So it's a different way of thinking, for one. And also keep in mind, all the music that we know and love as horn players, from back to Bach, Beethoven, all that, they all created their music improvisationally. Like, that was the genesis approach for all the music we play. Beethoven, he improvised all day, and then he would write down his music. So we may not think that it's useful to us, so to speak, now, but it may be the most useful thing we could ever do in some ways, because it's the way music ultimately is created. There's no difference between improvising and composing, other than just composing is writing down ideas more formally on the page. When you improvise, it ties everything together. So I'll just give you an example now that I have my horn with me. So with my students, we do scales. So if I say, all right, let's play a D Dorian mode. Right, that's the scale. And I just say, let's create, just play something using those notes, right? And so, okay, let's see what I can think. I didn't know what I was going to play. I had those notes to choose from. Just started to play what I felt. I don't know. It wasn't right or wrong. It just was. And maybe I like some of it. Maybe you like it so much that you write it down. But if you don't do it, you won't know it. So I really encourage you all just to improvise. There's a lot of information on it. Jeff Agrell's books are fantastic. By the way, he's a longtime horn camp faculty. He no longer is, he's retired now, but my teacher, Doug Hill, huge advocate of improvisation. It lets us find our voice. So by doing that little exercise I just did, I'm also putting all my knowledge in. It's like I'm taking my theoretical knowledge, I'm taking my ear training knowledge, I'm taking my ability on the instrument, the craft of playing, and I'm putting them all together at once. And even my understanding of style and idiom, the mode was informing it. So it's a way of really kind of super impacting all the different points of musicianship in that one moment. And you learn a ton about that. You kind of realize what you know and what you don't know. But it doesn't matter, because you just play what you know. That's what Miles Davis said. He goes, play what you know and try to do a little better. That's what he said. So I really would encourage it. And just doing a little bit goes a long way. Notice, like the song of the day, we're not spending more than a few minutes on it. But if you like it, do more. But if you don't, if it's not interesting to you, at least try it. What we call, with my kids, we call it like the no thank you helping. Like if they don't want the food, it's like, okay, you don't like the food, but you get a no thank. So if you don't like improvising, still do a no thank you helping, and I think you'll like it over time. It utilizes our music theory, ear training, and sight singing skills all together in a really wonderful way. And then a little bit in composing, again, they're interrelated. You don't have to be Mozart. I think that's the biggest challenge for us right now. It's like we already have all these great composers, and we're like, well, I can't write something as good as Mozart or Beethoven. Well, they all started somewhere, you know? And if we don't let ourselves even try, we'll never be able to do anything. So we can't it's the whole thing of like trying to compare ourselves with others. I think it's, one of the most difficult things in life in some ways, but just really try to encourage yourself that like I don't even have, I'll never be Mozart, I'll never be that kind of composer, but I'm okay with that, because I want to get the benefit. I want to enjoy music on that level and create music, and I don't want to do it just for the sake of positioning or something. So try to keep in mind that doing a little bit of improvising, doing a little bit of composing, maybe, it goes a long way. If anything, it's just going to make you a better player. That's what I say. People say, well, how is this going to tie into me getting a job? It's like, well, I don't see how it couldn't, Tell me how it wouldn't connect to that, if that's what you're really thinking about. But it's really just going to make us better musicians. So if it's making us a better musician, it probably ties into getting work, actually. Do it just for fun. That's the thing. My best friend and I, when we were in college, we worked at a music store, and we'd sometimes make fun of the new age artists because a lot of it kind of sounded the same. And I mean, apologies to anybody who loves new age music. I actually liked it too. But we had a fake new age music band that we created, and we would write all these fake songs. But the funny thing, it was all a joke, but it was funny because some of the songs actually we found out were good and people liked them. Like, what? But we had no pressure on ourselves. So if that helps you, just do it totally for fun. Again, it ties everything together, all of our knowledge. The more knowledge we gain, the more technique you gain on the instrument, the more knowledge you gain theoretically, the more historical knowledge contextual knowledge, you can bring that all together. If you take that Dorian scale again, it's like, well, okay, now let's do more of a kind of a post-bop feel. We're gonna do some swing, let's add a little idiomatic thing to it. My knowledge of that idiom allows me to do that. But if I didn't have that knowledge, I wouldn't be able to go into it. Or I can do, okay, how about more of an Austrian march, stylistic knowledge, maybe that wasn't the best Austrian march, but I'm sure that was. Okay, so, and also, these sort of things, what I find is a very difficult thing to teach, honestly, is this concept of musicality and expression. It's like, some people say, you can't teach that. It's like, well, yeah, maybe you can't teach it the way that you teach, how to do math problems. But I think you can help draw it out of people as teachers, and I think we can help draw it out of ourselves, because that's what education really is. It's not like a putting in, it's really a drawing out, right? And creativity allows us to understand ourselves and understand the inner voice that's in us that we then can share. So I think it gets us connected to ourselves. And actually, I think it changes sort of our consciousness in many ways. It's a different kind of experiencing the world around us. And I think it's ultimately the kind of mindset we want to be in when we perform. That idea of we're connected to ourselves and we're connected to those around us, and we're just communicating. If we never do it in our practice, it's going to be very hard for us to engage with that when we perform for others, I think. And so that's how I think we can actually become more creative and more musical and play with more expression. This is one of the ways, by simply creating music ourselves. But it's not necessarily for performance. It could just be for fun. But I think if you do it, it's going to connect to performance, actually. So then, obviously, fundamentals in craft. I mean, I teach the fundamentals class here, and what I do with that class is I integrate all these concepts into what's called the integrated fundamentals class. So obviously in the horn, we need to learn to gain control of the instrument. Daily work in developing all aspects of playing is necessary. That's why we have our warm-ups, but the work is much better if it is musically informed. If I'm doing scales, all the scales we just did, instead of just going, how about at the very least, let's phrase it, so phrase the line. I can change the articulation to be something else. If it's more Mozartian, you know, you can add a musical element to it. Like this is going to be much more useful for us when we're actually applying it to music. So I really don't see a separation between the craft and the musicality. I think they are integrated. And I think by solving musical issues, we solve technical issues, and vice versa. Daily work on developing all aspects of playing is necessary. Yeah, musical form. Always integrate the art with the craft. So that's why, again, integrated fundamentals. We work on not only sound production, building musical lines, phrasing, dynamics, but it's all together in one. It's not separate. The singing self, becoming a better musician through all of this listening and study. Yeah, this is what just creates the musical mind. The more of this kind of stuff we do, the better the real instrument, which is us, becomes. You know, the more confidence we have in our own interpretation. And I personally like, you know, I like horn players of all types. I mean, I like people who play brass horns, silver horns, gold horns, red horns, blue horns. Like, I love everything because it can all sound great, and every single person has their own unique voice on the instrument, just like their own unique voice personally. And I think that that should be celebrated. And so you know, doing these kind of things and thinking this way, I think is a good way of understanding our authentic sound and our authentic musical creativity and voice. And then, you know, if you have 100 horn players, my goal would be to make them sound, you know, whatever way they would want to sound uniquely. You know, not make them all sound the same, but bring out those beautiful, unique aspects of everybody, letting your own voice come through. Become your own unique player with your own unique things to say. Because when we're young, we listen to recordings, we have our favorite players and things, but eventually it's like we want to be saying the things that we want to say. All those players that you liked in the recordings, at some point, they did the same process. They listened, but then they decided, you know, I have something to say too, and I'm going to express it. And then they do it. So my hope for all of you is you can kind of find that in your playing. You can become the voice to imitate. Yeah, all the singing and buzzing helps to make you the musician to emulate in your head. And then you're not just listening to the recording, not just listening to your teacher, favorite players. It's like it's coming from you. You're now imitating what's in your head and your heart. And this is what it means to truly sing on the horn. That's what I think. And my hope for you is you can all find that, you know. Creating goals. So we're about halfway through this, and now the next part of this is kind of dealing with maybe helping ourselves plan out how we are going to work on these things. You know, maybe how this is going to be a long process. You know, there's this idea of product thinking, product mindset, and then process mindset. So if I'm, you know, taking an audition or something, that is going to be assessed as a product ultimately. When I sit down and play that for those 5 minutes, it's like, okay, that's being assessed and it's being graded and all these kind of things. And it's a product, so to speak. And that's fine. We have to do that stuff. But there's also the process, the long process, the daily work that we do, that we kind of turn off our judging brain in large part. We're listening, but we're not judging. We're just letting ourselves go through the process, gain the skills. I really encourage you to think that way. Like, think about, you know, all the preparation for an audition, something. Let the audition just be another day in the process. Don't put all the weight on it, you know. And then do another day in the process. That's how I started to feel like with recitals over time. It's kind of like in music school, you get like one recital you have to do to graduate, and so like everything's riding on it. And I think it's crazy. I tell the students, like, do many recitals. Make this just one recital in the process of what probably is going to be eventually a daily event for you or a weekly event. It's a much healthier way of thinking. So just having said that, creating goals, ask yourself the questions like, what do you value in music and art? So sometimes we don't even ask that question. We find ourselves working on all these things, like, I gotta play this piece, well, not necessarily. Like, you know, like, what music do you like? Maybe it's not all classical music, or maybe it is classical music, but maybe it's only a certain part of it. That's perfectly fine. Just, it's really important for us to understand what we really like, what we value, and not let any of that be pushed aside for us, right? And then ask yourself the question. I ask my students these questions. What do you value broadly in life. You know, maybe a value is to have a family, or maybe a value is to, you know, help your community. You know, whatever your broad values are, you know, I think it's really important to be in touch with that, because you certainly would want to give yourself the opportunity to have that be a major part of your life. You know, every human deserves that. So the answers to these questions will likely change and evolve over time. So and that's fine, you know, but it's important to kind of write them down every so often. Creating goals too, after answering these two questions, ask yourself what you want to go after in life. In other words, is it possible to create a career, or maybe a career is the wrong word sometimes, but just a life path that combines your artistic and personal values? Because some of the more traditional careers in music, like say a full-time orchestra or a full-time, you know, military band, for instance, maybe these don't even tie in to what you came up with those answers. You know, oftentimes they do, but maybe they, after you answer the questions, maybe they don't. That's perfectly fine, but it's important for you to know that. So then you think, okay, no, my path would be like this. I want to play chamber music that is by, you know, combines music of, you know, these cultures, and I want to write this music, and I want to play it and work with these people. You start to realize, like, I want this, and I want my schedule to be like, okay, if yes, maybe this is the best path. You know, maybe the traditional paths aren't for you, but now there's a new path that you can create. But you wouldn't be able to know that unless you did this little exercise. But maybe it's the traditional path, and that's fine too. Okay, this is an interesting exercise, you know, to think about in terms of your horn playing, or your music career. So if money was not needed, this is Alan Watts, by the way. So ask yourself what you would do with your time if money was not necessary. Like say you inherited $1 billion or something, and you didn't have to work a day in your life. So what would you do with your time? You know, so maybe the first month you'd just party. I don't think I'd do that, but maybe I would, because okay, go to the beach for a month, but then probably you're gonna get bored after about a month, and you're gonna ask yourself, like, well, I got the rest of my life to live. Like, what do I really want to do with my time? Like, how would I spend my time if nothing else was required of me? You know, and whatever the answer to that question is, probably just start to do that. You know, I don't think in our culture we allow ourselves to ask those questions sometimes. You know, but I think we have the right to ask those questions. Action plan. So once you realize what you really want, then go after it. You know, if it's to be first horn of the Vienna Philharmonic, great. So you understand that now. If it's to have your own chamber group, or to do an ensemble of creative music and, you know, start touring with it and make recordings, awesome. If it's to have a music center in a community where you teach people, and you help the community, that's fantastic. You know, whatever it is. If it's just to, you know, play the horn better and to enjoy it more, great. But you understand it now. Like, you've taken the time to understand what you want, which I think is a critical part of goal setting. So then make a 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 20-year fantasy career goal plan. Again, I used the word career, but you could just life path if you want. This is kind of challenging. When I first did this, 1 year seemed pretty good. 10 years was hard for me. I thought, well, I never thought 10 years in the future. Like, what would I want to be? Like, what would I want to be doing? Even 20 years, whoa! But I did it. It was a really interesting exercise. So then start at the end goal and go backwards. So after 20 years, you say, well, I want to be in a college teaching position. You know, I want to have, you know, tenure, and I want to like teach and play and do my creative stuff. It's like fantastic. So start there. But now go backwards. So being as detailed as possible about all you must do in order to achieve these highest goals that you're setting for yourself. We're going to be kind of breaking it down. Oops, did I just get off this? What happened? Oh, so what did I do? I'm sorry, apologies. I need to go back to my screen. And now I'm going to share the screen again. There we go. Sorry about that. My bad.
It's kind of showing up a little bit strange for us. What are you seeing? A normal?
Yep. Okay.
Page?
You know what? This is the end. And so I just touched the screen and it went off. So my apologies. So that's what I would say. So as we kind of, you know, we're not going to go quite the full time today, but there's some time for questions. this is the to achieve your goals. I would say try this process. Horn playing or anything else, and see what you come up with. And like my good friend always says, it's the intention. Like once you form the intention of what you want, then the sky's the limit. But I think the most difficult thing is sometimes we don't know what we really want because we haven't explored it. So that's what I do try to do with my students. I really want them to understand that all pathways are possible. You can experience excellence in infinite modalities, so to speak. But to do that, we first must understand what we want to do. So this exercise has really helped me personally, and I think it's helped a lot of my students. So hopefully it can help you if you would like. That's the end of my lecture.
Thank you so much for sharing all that fabulous information, Bernhard. We did have one question pop into the chat.
Sure.
While you're speaking. It was about the ear training stuff. Addison asked, I copied the wrong question. They were asking about apps or websites to help with ear training. Is there anything that you know of that exists for that?
Oh, absolutely. Well, you probably heard of the notational software app, the Sibelius. That's actually how I create all the, a lot of the music that I do. They have a really great thing called Aurelia, which is, you have to buy it separate from the package. And I could be, they might have changed it. This was true a couple of years ago before the pandemic, and they may have upgraded it, or so you want to just search Sibelius and ear training and see whatever the new thing. But most of the notational software has ancillary training sessions or software, and those are like Aurelia was excellent, I gotta say. But I actually have a couple on my iPad right now that I would really recommend. I'll just get one of them is called Earmaster. And you can there's a free version of it, and you can pay for upgrades. I recommend the Royal College of Music classes it has. This is an app that, having something like this when I was a student would have been amazing. So just to be able to pay, $15 for an app like this. They have many different courses. They have a jazz course for those of you interested in jazz music. It's really hard and amazing. Also, there's Harmononics. Harmononics is a really great one. I would recommend. And there's just actually, there's a lot. Like if you go on search ear training on, just search Apple for that, for apps, you're going to come up with maybe possibly 50 or more. These are ones that I've explored personally, but I'm sure there are more. There's another one called Tenuto that I have. I haven't used it as much, honestly. Harmonia 3 is another one. And this one, this is Playground Sessions. I think this might be one. Let me just make sure I'm not telling something wrong. Oh, you can't access it. I think that was one that I haven't explored it yet, but at one point I got a list of them. What you might do too is you might just do a Google search of some reviewer and say, what are the best ear training apps of 2022? Because there might be some new ones too that you want to explore. But I got to say, Earmaster, really good. And I've done the whole thing now. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I'd never heard of any of those really. It's remarkable how many things are like in an app now. I remember, so yesterday we had Natalie Grana, and she was talking all about ear training. And I remember having it in class, but thinking like, oh, there's an app for that. And of course there is.
A couple more apps, by the way. If you have Tonal Energy, is a thing. I've used Tonal Energy every day of my life since 2013, basically. And I remember I met the creator of it once when we were on tour in Houston. He came to our concert. He introduced himself as, I created Tonal Energy, and I was starstruck. It was like meeting Michael Jackson or something like that from my childhood, and I was like, oh my gosh. And because this is the person that I literally had spent every single day for the past 2 or 3 years with this app, and here's the guy who created it. So Tonal Energy is fantastic. Yeah. And it actually can be a ear training app too, as a assist. You can do drones on it. You can record yourself. You can analyze your sound. It's way more than just a tuner app, and I'd highly recommend that app for anybody. Another couple other apps, by the way, just to go on that subject. Fourscore is a music. You can download PDFs into it, and then it's like you can notate and have it to read from. And the quintet, that's all we used. We used that, going all the way back to 2014. we no longer use printed music anymore. So you can store terabytes of music on this app and have it there ready for you to use, and collate it in any way you want. Fourscore, it's at FOR, then SCORE, Fourscore. Another one is iReal Pro, little I, then big R, lowercase EAL, another word Pro, iReal Pro. That's a backing track app for anybody who's interested in improvising. It's like incredible. It doesn't cost very much money, and it's a file sharing app. So then you can download, go on the forum and download the, jazz 4,000 top tunes. You have like 4,000 backing tracks for free. It's overwhelming. I mean, the kind of stuff, if you like Jamie Aebersold growing up, which I had a little bit of that, but you had to pay, $20 a pop to get one of these books. Now it's like, 14 bucks, all the Jamie Aebersold things. The only thing about it is the backing tracks, the voice leaning is not, or the voicing is pretty uninspired. So the Aebersold stuff at least had live musicians and they're recording. That this doesn't have that, but I think for just the purpose of learning tunes, and you can get classical pieces, you can get holiday pieces, pop music. I mean, you could have hundreds of thousands of songs on that thing with you can create your own. That's the coolest thing too. So yeah, right now we're living in an era with technology where it's kind of unfathomable, actually, like what's possible. It's so unfathomable that probably the most difficult thing is just making a choice, like of what to get and what to work on, because it's just so overwhelming. So I would just say, go with one of these things. They're all going to be good, and then stick with it. See if you like it. And the same thing with like the DAW things. If that is interesting, you have GarageBand, you have Logic, Pro Tools, Ableton, Reaper, all of these different digital audio workstations. They're all great. Like, so if you just start with one, do some research. Maybe Pro Tools is beyond what you need. Maybe just GarageBand is what you need. Do a little research on what you get initially, and probably once by learning that, it's going to be enough for you. I have that conversation with my students all the time because they're all using. One uses Ableton, one uses Pro Tools, one uses Logic. What's this question?
Would it be possible for you to put your list of apps in the Google Drive? We can definitely send out a lot of these apps. What I'll probably end up doing, so I didn't take any notes, maybe someone here is taking notes. What I'll end up doing is watching back the recording. I'll write down them all, and then we can send them out to you guys.
Oh, one thing too is both Sibelius, Finale, Dorico, and I'm sure maybe another one. These are notational apps or notational, yeah, apps. I guess they all have tablet apps now, so you no longer just have to use them on your laptops. You can actually use them on your tablets, and it's like incredible. So you can have your iPen, writing in your music.
One other app for like getting sheet music, IMSLP has an app now as well.
Yep.
And they have a huge library of lots of classical music, and you can just it works pretty much exactly the same as Fourscore. I think on Apple devices, Fourscore might be like $3 or something like that, and the IMSLP starts free.
You can take the IMSLP stuff and put it into Fourscore.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so if you don't like the layout of ISMLP, which personally I don't like it, you just put export to Fourscore. It's in your
nice. I didn't know that.
In your library, yeah.
Yeah, just some other questions that I had thought of as we were going as you were going through your presentation. And if you guys have any more questions, feel free to just drop them in the chat. So you were doing your improvisation stuff, and I think for some of us it can be a little bit daunting thinking about starting. So how did you start with improvisations? What was your first sort of experiments with it?
That's a good question. I mean, honestly, I think I always liked I love music, and I always liked to create music. So when I was younger, I think I liked music like jazz music and these kind of things. Probably I knew much more about them than classical music. Like when I first, because the horn, I really didn't know much about the instrument. I was just playing because it was in band. And all I knew, I just wanted to try to play that music. So someone told me, for instance, like, well, this is a blues scale. And I started to kind of learn it. I think when I really decided to focus on this because pretty soon into the training with horn, all my teachers were like, well, you gotta work on your excerpts, like that's the most important thing. And so I was kind of trained to not almost like think of improvisation as unimportant, or I mean, they didn't mean it that way, but I think that was the message. It's like, do that stuff maybe, but this is what's really important, and only spend time with this. And even like in relation to solo music too, it's like I kind of like to work on my solo music, like the concertos, and teachers like, well, you really been working your excerpts first. And they were trying to, get a job, get an orchestra job. That's what they were thinking. But I really was interested. I was like, no, I like this music very much. So I think from an early age, I was always drawn to things that weren't like the conforming into the norm, if that makes sense. Like it wasn't like, what was not important to me was doing things because it would eventually make me money. Like that wasn't why I would do things. That wasn't my motivation. I just like to do things because I was interested in them.
Right.
Does that make sense? So improvisation was one of those things. When I went to grad school, actually, that was probably the first time I really allowed myself to take the time to start writing my own music again and to improvise again. I just carved out that time. It was one of the reasons I went to grad school. I went to grad school specifically to not do orchestra music, which I had been inundated with and had actually a pretty good career at that point. And I said, if I wait too long to do this, I'm not going to probably do it. I wanted to do solo competitions and focus on these things, which I did for 2 years really intensively. I threw everything into it. So that was, I think, the time I really allowed myself to do it. And then, of course, my career once again went like into the entrenchment of the normal things, which is great. I'm grateful for it, but I didn't have a lot of time to think about those things, because when you're working full time, you have to kind of survive in your environment. And I had a family eventually, and that took up more time. Also, like with my kids, like I found myself just doing a lot of the creating of songs and things when they were little, and just realizing how fun this was. So when I finally stepped down from the quintet in 2018, I really wanted, and I had more time now to teach with better continuity in my studio. I wanted to introduce improvisation consistently in the lessons. So that's what and I started doing it with scales, kind of like I just showed you. And now it's grown to be like much more, and it oftentimes leads to writing music, down. So does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. I think starting with scales is a great way for a lot of us to sort of have this. You only have 8 or 6 or 15 notes or whatever. You have a limited scale of notes to work with. It kind of, we were talking about all these apps and you get frozen by choice. I feel the same sometimes with improvisation, and narrowing it down to a scale or mode kind of.
Yeah, well, another thing that you mentioned that, so even more basic than that, a great way to start for those of you that are interested is just take one rhythm and away from the horn, like da, 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 tapping it. I'll use my, and then start to just play on the rhythm. So I wanted to change it right away. So, and that's the cool thing. When you limit yourself to something very simple, the first thing you're going to want to do is break away from it. And that's a really good thing. It's like rules are meant to be broken. But all the great composers would do that. They'd limit Stravinsky would, these are the notes I'm writing, but he immediately break away from it. So setting limits, I would say, is the best thing you can do for yourself, especially at the very start. So one rhythm, or just like that. Just start to play around with that. And then on the horn, do one note. Like not 8 notes, but one note, And then it'd be like, now with that one note, I can change it. I'll just experiment with it to see if I can create something. Just on one is amazing what you can do on one note. So start there. And then if you want to go like, oh no, I want more notes, then take 2 notes, you know. You know, just that rhythm that I kind of developed, and then the notes kind of just immediately led into that. So starting very simple, you might be surprised at how fast you want to move it. And so in our fundamentals, I encourage everybody, we're doing the co-crush etudes, but I've altered them, usually modes. And I encourage everybody by the end of the week to, like, you know, take these different elements of music and write your own versions, you know, when you experiment with it. But those are, yeah, I think starting very simple, like so simple, like just with a rhythm, just with 1 note. And then when you get a little more familiar with that, try like 5 notes. Like a pentatonic scale is a really, really good way to start. Pentatonic scales being like a common one would be, right? Just those notes. So. We all know that, you know, lots of melodies that have pentatonic scales based on them. So just try those notes. You know, just take the notes and see what you feel. And it's all about feel. Or another really great way, by the way, is the harmonic series, because there's no valves. Like that 1 and 3 combination we started with. You know, it's a great way because you're just holding on to 1 and 3. Any combination works. 1 and 3 actually is, I mean, I wouldn't start there because it's really unstable, and I almost felt I was missing every note. The open fingering is probably better. And then and you get that, what you get right away too is kind of a pentatonic scale. Get your Lydian dominant scale right away. You know, it's a really beautiful, easy way of improvising and requires no knowledge of the horn almost. So
Yeah, just grab the horn and blow.
that's right. Anyways, that's a big question, but that's what I would say about how I got into it, and some of the strategies I would say are really good to just begin exploring.
Yeah, that's really cool. It makes it such an easy, sort of risk-free way to begin. Just like tap rhythm and have fun.
And you're just thinking creatively then. You're just creating what you feel. And I think that, and then if you kind of allow yourself to kind of hold on to that, like to me, that's the way I want to feel when I'm playing other music. You know, I want to kind of have that connection to it. I don't want to feel like it's something separate from me. I want to internalize it.
Right. Let's see, you've mentioned a lot of different sort of scales, pentatonic, Lydian dominant, all these sort of things. You've also mentioned sort of other tonality, tonal systems. Is there like we were talking about apps earlier, is there any recommendation for where you can find like a compendium or list of some of these things?
Oh yeah. Well, I made a very modest one that you obviously helped me with for our integrated fundamentals package, just to get people started. But probably the best one I can think of is the repository of scales and modes by the amazing legendary jazz musician Yusef Lateef. You can get it from his website. He's no longer with us now, but it's YUSEFLATEEF. Yusef Lateef. I actually have it in the packet. I'll get that's like a resource of resources from all the scales and modes and patterns around the world. And plus, if you haven't heard him as a musician, just listen to him. He's like one of the greatest musicians ever. See if I
think this is
You
.com. Let's see, is this the right website?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
And
perfect.
so you can not the compositions, but it would be like
A lot of business here on my screen. There we are.
yeah, Yusef Latif. Yeah, he was the one that came up with that. So
yeah, there's a lot of stuff. You guys can explore that on your own.
anyways, but if you're really interested in this, I would say that's the place to go. But otherwise, I think like I just included like a really basic primer. There's a lot of things online, like just a list of modes or a list of scales, list of pentatonic scales. I mean, that's stuff you can find online for free. Yeah, so this is called Repository of Scales and Melodic Patterns by the great musician Yusef Latif, and it's at yuseflatif.com. That's probably the best one if you're looking for like the best version of it to give you. But probably at this point, all you need to do is just explore the harmonic series and learn your scales. That'll get you started. You don't have to necessarily get something like that right away.
Gotcha. Well, I know here at camp we typically end things 10 minutes early to give campers enough time to go to their next session. So I think that's a good stopping point for us as well. I just want to say thank you guys, everyone here, guys and gals and non-binary pals, for coming to this session of Horn Camp Connect, live from KBHC 2022. We're so happy that you all joined us to play and to connect with one another. If you'd like to rewatch today's session or share it, we will upload it later in the future. I'm not sure if we'll get to it today or not, but they will all eventually end up on YouTube. Feel free to join us tomorrow again at 8 a.m. Eastern Time for the next edition. Jesse will lead the warm-up, and Peggy Moran will present her session on mindfulness, meditation, and visualization, and how those topics can affect your horn playing. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.